Welcome to Proverbs on the Patio, a chapter-by-chapter study through the book of Proverbs. If it's your first time watching, glad you're here. What I'm going to do is read you a few verses from the book of Proverbs, chapter 18, that I've pulled out. We're not going to read the whole chapter, but I want to focus on a few key verses that I think speak a lot of wisdom. Now, the book of Proverbs is not written and cataloged in order. In other words, it's not all the verses about marriage, all the verses about money, all the verses about friendship. Every single chapter has a little nugget from just about every area of life right next to another nugget about a different topic. So every verse kind of changes tune. So if you were to read a chapter a day, you would more than likely cover a topic you may be dealing with, or maybe something you didn't even realize you needed to hear. So that's why it's written that way. I want to start with verse 1. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. This is not talking about somebody who's just a little lonely, or maybe even likes to be alone in a sense of relationally, maybe somebody who's introverted. No, this idea here is someone who refuses to become part of the community, kind of leads an insurrection against the community, wants to be against what everyone else is for. And so this is somebody who has decided to go against the grain. This is someone who really has determined not to be a part of community. This, of course, is why in the New Testament we're called to be part of the body of the church. We need community. We need people. It says he breaks out against all sound judgment. You and I need other people in our lives. We need wise counsel. We've heard that over and over throughout the Proverbs. Then in verse 2, a very different take. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. If ever there was a verse for right now, that is what we are dealing with. Too many of us want to express our opinion, but don't want to learn and hear. I believe that there is something for me to learn from people I disagree with. I believe there's a reason for me to listen to people who may not vote like me, think like me, who may not look like me, or be from the same place as me. But too often we act like fools who take no pleasure in understanding. We don't want to learn anything new. We've determined we know all there is to know, and we only want to share our expression or express our opinion. Don't be like this fool, in other words. Down in verse 6, a fool's lips walk into a fight, and his mouth invites a beating. There is some humor in some of these proverbs. You could use that if you were talking to somebody, man. Your mouth is inviting a beating. There is some humor here, but it's also true. You and I know people whose own lips get them into trouble, whether it's a physical abuse or a beating of some type. We all know people, man, when we were growing up, who just would get into fights, and their mouths would write checks their bodies couldn't cash. But more importantly, the idea here is his lips walk him into a fight. Whether it's a physical fight, a financial fight, a legal battle, his mouth invites a beating. Too many people I know who say too much, who share their opinion too often, and it leads to trouble or ruin. The very next verse says, a fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare to his soul. Then in verse 8, I was talking with some people in our church today about this very thing. It says, the words of a whisperer or a gossiper are like delicious morsels. For whatever reason, we love gossip. Humans do, man. When I hear somebody talking gossip, we love listening to it, we love talking it, but it says they go down into the inner parts of the body. Here's the problem with gossip. Once I hear it, I digest it. There's no way for me to look at that person the same way. There's no way for it not to affect how I think about them, whether I'm gossiping about them or hearing gossip about them. When we enjoy this little delicacy of gossip, the proverb says, it goes down and it has a way of settling into the way we think about someone. And then in verse 9, a really great proverb that I think sometimes we read too quick and don't even know what it means. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. Now, every one of us know people who destroy. They break things. They hurt people. They ruin everything. They destroy quickly. But it says here that somebody who is slack in their work, they're the brother. They're related to the person who destroys quickly. We think, well, if somebody's just lazy, what is it? Is it a big deal? Well, in our work, if we're slack, we may not destroy quickly, but we can slowly destroy a company. We can slowly destroy our relationships. And so while somebody who's a destroyer does things quickly, somebody who's lazy or slack, that can slowly lead to ruin. So we got to be careful that we're not a destroyer quickly, but we also make sure that we're not slack or lazy in our work, in our relationships, in our spiritual walk. So I think sometimes we all know somebody who's that destroyer, right? They ruin things quickly, like whether it's a relationship, whether it's their walk with the Lord. They blow up. They very quickly let everything go. But if we're not careful, we can be that slack man, that lazy individual who over time our relationship with the Lord deteriorates. Over time, our work relationships deteriorate. So don't be that it's the brother. These things are related. Then in verse 14, a very, very ahead of its time verse. We know it to be true now. A man's spirit will endure sickness, but a crushed spirit, who can bear? Even when you are physically hurt, if you have a strong spirit, you're going to survive. But the verse says, hey, who can endure a crushed spirit? More than we need physical strength, our emotional, our spiritual strength, our mental strength matters more than our physical strength sometimes. So this verse was written thousands of years before we know all that we know today about how our mental health affects our physical well-being. But the writer says, listen, if your spirit is strong, you're going to make it through just about anything. But when your spirit is crushed, when you lose hope, when you lose the fight in you, man, who can bear that? And then I want you to skip on down to verse 24, a very, very deep verse that honestly as a kid I didn't really get. It says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. This verse is deeper than you might think at first glance. What it's saying is, listen, there are a lot of people who have tons of friends. Maybe they have thousands of Facebook friends. Maybe they have fans. But they don't have any deep, lasting relationships. In verse 24, it says, there may be a man of many companions who still comes to ruin. Like they have all these friends, but no one's there for them when they need them. However, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So there's a contrast here. It's saying you got this one person who has tons of friends, and yet no one cares about them, no one really knows them, no one's really there for them. And then you got somebody else who doesn't have thousands of friends, doesn't have dozens of friends, just has one friend who is closer than a brother. The emphasis here is you and I should be building relationships deeper than skin deep or surface deep. You need deep relationships more than you need a multitude of relationships. I would much rather have one close friend than 100 friends who don't even really know me. So the power of this verse is saying, listen, we all know people who seem to have it all together. They've got these big parties with all these friends who are always around. The question is, who do they have that is really in their corner when everything hits the fan, everything falls apart? And so the question for us is, what does this have to do with us in the church? Too many of us are like the man with many companions. We have church friends, right? On Sunday I go, they know my name, I know their name, hey, high five, and we don't really know one another. We don't know what's going on in each other's lives. But when you get into a small group and you have somebody close to you, this is why there's so many one another verses. I don't need to just be a part of the church. I need one another faith. I need people who can hold me accountable, encourage one another, love one another, serve one another, exhort one another, like actually approach one another, confront one another. We need that kind of friendship. So my question to you as we wrap up Proverbs chapter 18 is this. Who do you have in your life who is a close enough friend? They stick closer than a brother. They actually have your back, but at the same time, they're close enough to approach you when you're wrong. They're close enough to you that you would trust them and you would listen to them if they approached you about something in your life that was out of balance, maybe some sin in your life, maybe something you said that you should not have said, maybe how you're treating your spouse, maybe how you're talking to your kids. Do you have someone like that? And if the answer is no, I'm just telling you, you need that person. We all do. You say, Pastor Mark, look, I'm telling you, I have someone like that. I have friends that are allowed to call me out. I have pastors at other churches that I meet with who tell me when I am acting suspect. You know what I'm saying? Who ask me probing and difficult questions that make me squirm a little bit. You need that. I need that. We need that. So the question becomes not how many Facebook friends do you have? How many people are you texting in a group message? How many of us have a friend who sticks closer than a brother? If not, the Bible says, show yourself friendly. If you don't have a friend, show yourself friendly. Like, look for that. You can find that in group. Man, when we look for these things, we can find these things. And I'm going to say this and I'm done. For some reason, this is hard for men. For whatever reason, dudes just bottle up, and I've seen it 100 times in our church because we're in a military town where guys don't need friends and they just move here for 3 years and then there for 3 years. Listen, you and I need close relationships where we can be real with one another, confess faults to one another, and you need this and I need this. So guys, hear me out. Don't just say, I've got it, I'm good. You need somebody, find somebody. So I want to say this before I sign off of Proverbs on the Patio tonight. Church is going really, really well. We are blessed to have a tent on our property. We're actually looking at expanding that tent. We got one of those tents where you can keep adding on, and right now it'll hold about 100 people, socially distanced. And we have been bumping up against that, so we're going to need to expand it because our church wants to get back together, and we're trying to do that safely. So the question becomes, what are we going to do in the future? Well, we're going to try to add on to the tent because so many of you have been coming. Our kids are now meeting indoors safely, and they're doing great. Kids over the age of 10 are wearing masks. Our students have been meeting indoors. They are doing awesome in there. They've got their group back together on Sundays, and so we are slowly progressing forward back to all the things we did as a church before. As of right now, 0 to 2, our nurseries and toddler classes are still shut down for right now, but your kids are more than welcome to sit with you under the tent. Look, I'll be real with you. Every week we've got a toddler or a baby that makes some noise. It's okay, because we've also got cars driving by. It's not what it used to be indoors. It's actually a little better. We have really enjoyed having church under the tent. It's loud, man. We're singing. People are clapping, laughing. It's great. We love you. Whenever you're ready to come back to church, we have a service every Sunday at 9:30 outside under the tent, socially distanced. Now, if you're not ready yet, that's fine. But that's where we're going to be for now. And it's more than likely if we keep growing, we're going to have multiple services. But right now, it's every Sunday at 9:30 under the tent. Y'all, I love you. I'm praying for you. I'm excited about what God is doing in our church. And I look forward to what God's going to do in our hearts through this. Don't use this as an excuse to get away from God and away from church. Draw closer to the Lord, whether you're joining us online or in person. You can be growing spiritually right now. Have a great rest of your night.